Hi everyone, welcome back. So today I've got the Botanical Atrium, which is the die of the month for the large die of the month for January 25. I'm using some A2 layers from Waffle Flower and a August 24 Colourful Expressions sentiments. A couple of sentiments in there for this. I'm calling it a card, but it's more like a postcard. I'm sort of mixing up how I'm going to be doing my cards this year because I'm awful at getting them out the door. So I thought, actually, if I make them into kind of like postcards, then they'll just be there ready to go if I need an actual card, because I can then just stick this to the front of a card base. And hey presto, card done. But I just thought it makes more sense for me, and it also takes up less space to store them. So, rambling over. so there is a back piece, or like a solid piece to the atrium, which is ever so slightly wide or bigger than the atrium itself. So I've cut that out, both that and the atrium, in black, and I am layering up as much double-sided tape onto the back of this main solid piece. Not going very close to the edge, but I'll fix the little edges later anyway, if any of the tape sort of hangs over. And I'm getting it like as much of it on there. I thought it would be easier than glue. Glue gets a bit messy, so and I don't like it. I don't mind messy things, but when it comes to this kind of thing, it's sticky as well. It drives me mad. So what I did was I put the atrium, the delicate piece, if you like, over the top of the tape, and just used my bone folder to gently push it in. I haven't pushed it completely in because I may need to sort of finagle a couple of the pieces in. And then what I did was I had cut in 3 different colours. I have this pearlescent cardstock, which is a Tonic Studios cardstock, in a sort of pale pink. And then I happen to have some brighter pink and a sort of bright turquoise colour in my stash. So I cut the atrium out 3 times and then painstakingly put each of the pieces back, or carefully put them back from the die, once I die cut them, back into the delicate piece, with some low-tack tape on the back, just to hold all the pieces together, so that when I'm doing the inlay of all those pieces, I know which colour I've used and where I am with it, rather than having a pile of pieces to then contend with, which I started off doing and then thought that is never going to work. So this was much easier. Bearing in mind I got this one atrium out of those 3 colours. You will get numerous. You will at least get another 2. I'm guessing another 2 more maybe out of that. Is that right? My brain? No, maybe 3. So you'll get some more atriums if you wanted to keep going. I didn't bother with that. I just used it for this card. And so as I went, I literally winged this. As I went, I tried to make sure that I didn't have the same colour next to itself too much, so that it just created a nice sort of stained glass window effect-ish. So, and some of the pieces I didn't realise didn't actually cut completely out. So I just used a little, what do they call those? I think Americans call them X-Acto knives. But like a little, what do we call it? Craft knife. Hello. Little craft knife, just to get those pieces out. So this does take a bit of time. I will admit. This took me quite a long time. I didn't time myself. I probably should have, just to give you an idea. But it was quite therapeutic, and it's like a little mini puzzle without puzzle pieces, if that makes sense. Like they don't fit together as in like a puzzle does, but they pop in their little spaces. I don't know. It was nice to do. It was nice. So I added these, kept going down making my way down the atrium, and I did have a couple of parts where I put pieces in and then moved them because I didn't like how they looked. So you'll see that in a second. Where I think I moved these around a bit because I didn't want the pale pinks right next to each other at the bottom there as well. So because I hadn't burnished this on here either, it hadn't completely stuck, if that made sense. So I could lift up the pieces I wanted to lift up. So now I felt better because although I've got the big block of pink in the middle, the center or part of that will have those, and these are teeny tiny little pieces, but these little triangles will go in the center to create that circle in the pale pink, and then at the bottom there's now the blue pieces, which against the pink made more sense to me. I don't know. You'll find what works for you. Or you could just do this in one other colour and it will still look stunning. So there's our atrium all done. Like I say, it did take a little while, but it was nice to do. It was one of those things you could just put a bit of music on, or an audio book or something like that, your favourite show. I think I had Big Bang going. And you just zone out. And I love that. When I can do something like that and just zone out, it's good. It's good for the mind. So there's our atrium, and I thought that looked pretty cool. I was quite happy with that. Then my next thing was all the sentiments. Well, there's two sentiments, sorry. And the flowers. The leaves I just kept as they were, just as they cut out. There's no layering on them anyway. You could layer them up in different colours. You could ink on the edges. You could do all sorts of things. But I kept this as simple as possible because I'd spent however long on the atrium. I didn't want to then spend more time trying to ink all the pieces. So maybe that's lazy, but it's still made for, the cardstocks themselves are quite bright and fun. So I felt like it still looked really quite cool in the end. So for my flowers, I decided to go with 3 colours. I went with black, white, and the same turquoise colour cardstock that I had in the atrium and for my background panel. I love the 3 colours together. I think it looks really, really stunning. It just works. So all 3 flowers are different, but they all work nicely together. These are all from the same die set. And then to get the stems on, I've used one of them that I think was supposed to be for, there's some other flowers in there. I didn't use every single flower in there, but there's some smaller flowers in there, and I think some of these stems are supposed to be for that. I just used the stems. I wasn't going to cut out 4 stems when I needed 2, so I just used the stems that I had. You won't even know. I mean, you'll know, but nobody else will know. And that way they also go different directions, so it made it a bit more interesting. So now I've got my flowers all set up. I'm going to lay out roughly where I want these to go. So this sometimes takes me a minute because I'm not always the best at this. And I also wanted my leaves to be flatter and, my flowers to be raised up and that sort of thing. So I'm going to use some foam tape and some glue just to get these, stuck down. And when you're layering as well, this is why it's also a good idea to do this kind of thing. One is just kind of generally lay out where you want things so you know which piece is at the back. And so that's the first piece you will stick down. Otherwise you'll have a bit of a time trying to get something undone to stick it behind it. The other thing is with things like leaves, I used to get hung up on making sure that every part of every die cut was stuck down. So I would normally have gone, right, the stem and the whole leaf needs to have glue on it, but it doesn't. One, it's messier, and two, you really don't need that. And it also allows you afterwards, once the glue's dry, it will allow you to sort of curl the leaves up so that it just gives a bit more interest to the whole thing. I didn't actually do that in the end, but but that you can do that, and I think that would be really, really stunning. Or they might naturally just curl up because it's paper at the end of the day. So I got my leaves in place, and then I started adding my flowers in, and they were on some foam tape now. The stems are obviously going to be too long for where I'm working, so I'm going to keep snipping them off until I can get them where I want them. This one was a bit of a little monkey, shall we call it. So I had to keep finagling with that one. But the other flower then suddenly just popped into place, so it all worked out. And then when we get to the sentiment, I put some foam and some wet glue on it. I'll explain that when we get there. So my atrium's coming along nicely. I've got one more flower to add in, and then this should be the sort of flowers. But oh yes, so when I stuck this little flower down, this is my little monster. The stem, I thought it was a good idea to actually stick the stem flat, with some wet glue. It was not, so I undid that bit. I also trimmed up the leaf behind it just so it wasn't sticking out, so it looks like it's coming from behind that flower rather than behind all of it. I don't know why, but that just looked better in my head. And then the third flower, I'm not even going to put wet adhesive on the stem so I don't have that same issue, and I'm just going to pop that in place like so. So now that I have that done, I've got the sentiments. So for the sentiments, once I decided where I was going to stick them, what you sort of have to bear in mind is one layer. My flowers are raised up on foam, my leaves are not, but there's also then the layer of cardstock underneath the leaves. So depending on how quote unquote bumpy your layers are, to get them to lay as level as possible, I put some wet adhesive on the part that was going to, of the sentiment that was going to sit on the flower, and then a bit of foam adhesive on the part that would hang off the flower and be on across the leaves and the rest of the backdrop. And then I didn't press it too much into the sort of pressed it on the leaves rather than the rest of it, because otherwise it might curve slightly, because 2 layers of foam was too much. I don't know if that makes sense. You could always layer an extra layer of cardstock on it, I guess. That might help. But I just kind of went with foam and a little bit of wet adhesive. So I'm sorry I'm off camera here. But I'm just trying to see where it's about at the letter O that I needed the foam on the back, and then just adding some foam on there, and I think I mucked it up, so I'm going to start again. That's better. And then the same with my hugs. They were a little it's a smaller sentiment, so it's a little easier. And then what I did was I just kind of, you can't see this bit, but from this I'm actually looking at the side angle to make sure that none of that foam lands up on the flower, because again it'll make it look a bit bumpy, and that's not what you want. You don't want a wonky sign unless it's intentional. So for the hugs, same thing, just getting the foam on sort of a portion of it, and then the other bit will be wet adhesive. And sometimes you see, like the hugs, it's only a little bit that goes, most of it's going to overhang, so it's, it's quite easy to do, but it's a nice way, and then it all looks nice and flush, and it doesn't look all weird and wonky. So what am I trying to say? The atrium is going to get stuck just with some wet adhesive onto the base turquoise piece, and that piece I cut from the waffle flower A2 layers. I think it was the second die in, so it will fit nicely on an A2 card. If I decide down the line I want to give this to someone, I'll just pop it on a card front. It could be a white card front because there's white flowers on there. But that's it, guys. I mean, I say that's it. It took a lot. It took a while, but it's you can add all sorts of stuff to this. You could add some bling to it if you wanted to. You could add extra shimmer to the flowers. You could do so many other things. You could add some extra texture in the background before obviously sticking the atrium on. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you give this inlay technique a try. And yeah, bye for now.